Hello and welcome to the CDO Magazine interview series. I'm Dave Mariani, CTO founder of AtScale, and we're partnering with CDO Magazine, MIT CDO IQ, and the International Society of Chief Data Officers in a series of interviews. And today I have the pleasure of talking with Omer Awan, Chief Data and Digital Officer for Atrium Health. Omar, you have a pretty amazing background in the healthcare industry. You've been part of that industry for quite some time now. So great to meet you, first of all. For other analytics leaders out there like yourself, what advice would you give them when it comes to data strategy and really building an effective data strategy? What advice would you give them on that, Omar?
Yeah. So, I think that when we talk about when you talk about strategy, especially a data strategy, my advice would be that you have to understand that the overall data strategy for the organization really comprises of several other strategies that all need to be in place and driven individually for maximum impact. So for instance, there should be a clearly defined BI or business intelligence strategy, which is often confused with the analytics strategy. The two are related, but should be driven as separate strategies.
Okay.
Same goes for the infrastructure and data governance strategies. So in other words, your enterprise data strategy consists of your infrastructure strategy, your data governance strategy, your BI strategy, and the analytics strategy, and they all make your overall enterprise data strategy. So I think that's very important to make that distinction. At least we have found it very useful in our case. And the second part is that you all know that you can't improve what you can't measure. So you have to follow some sort of a framework or model to measure and guide your program or strategies. So in our healthcare, the different models, the one we follow is the HIMSS adoption model for analytics maturity, or AMAP. That's one to gauge where we are on different levels and what are the gaps and what other things we need to do to get to the next level.
Yeah, I really like using a maturity model because you really can chart your path and see where you need to invest in those areas. So big proponent in that. That's great advice. Great advice. And obviously you're a chief data officer. So that's the role. Is that so? When it comes to strategy, is that your job for the company as chief data officer or CDO?
Correct. So that's my primary role. But then, as I mentioned before, this is I cannot do it by myself. It's more of as a quarterback or a collaborative role. So it's very important to you can't do this without the support from our CIO, support from our chief strategy officer, and the phenomenal team. So it kind of all comes in, and yes, it's my responsibility, but with collaboration and help and support from a whole bunch of teammates.
Yeah, that's great. It's we've been talking a lot about data governance, and we should talk about data quality as well. And there's a lot of complexity in healthcare data. The data is coming from a lot of different sources, a lot of it unstructured, really. But so what do you how do you deal with that complexity of that healthcare data? So what do you do to make it so that you can keep your head above water when it comes to governance and quality?
Right, absolutely. So I feel, David, that there is a strong correlation between data governance and quality. So I feel that an effective data governance program is actually the key to addressing the complexity and quality issues with data in healthcare. So let me explain. So all data governance programs organize their work via some sort of work streams or lenses. And these typically include work streams like reference or master data management or metadata management, data policies, data domains, and most importantly, data quality. So through the lens of data governance into the data quality work stream, it does a few things for us. It prioritizes data quality initiatives, It ensures that data issues will be corrected at the earliest possible point in the data lifecycle. And it provides appropriate transparency to all known data quality incidents, includes what they are, what they impact, who is accountable, a resolution plan, and the time estimate for each incident. So, in other words, this is where the enterprise data quality strategy is actually built.
Mm-hmm.
And so in our organization, our data governance quality works team provides oversight for all 7 dimensions of, in our case, we look upon data quality across 7 dimensions. And so when I say 7 dimensions, I'm talking about stuff like completeness,
Mm-hmm.
as validity, all the way to consistency.
Mm-hmm.
And for the viewers, like for instance, one of the dimensions in accuracy. So in healthcare data, when we talk about accuracy, what are we talking about? We're talking about stuff like a male cannot be pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
Blood pressure can't be over 500. Weight can't be 0. Birth date can't be something in the future. So those kind of things. So making sure that we analyze the data quality through the lens of our quality work stream through data governance and focus on these dimensions.
Yeah, I'm glad you really sort of articulated what data quality really means in a concrete fashion, because a lot of people talk about it, but it seems sort of ephemeral and tough to pin down. So let me pin you down a little bit more on that. So where do those checks get baked in, Omar? Like, how do you? So what is it? What's the mechanism for doing the checks, and then what's the mechanism when something goes wrong?
So that is, it goes back to, first of all, formulating those processes. So like looking, as I mentioned, there's different dimensions of quality data. And then, first of all, it's like formulating policies and behaviors, actions that need to occur to make sure that, how do we make sure that these dimensions that validate, that, for instance, let's pick on one, like accuracy. How do you make sure that data is always accurate? So that's one dimension. And then making sure that we have the right corresponding policies, KPIs, metrics in place to make sure, like that very little thing. I mean, it sounds very trivial, and it's like common sense. I mean, that the weight cannot be 0. I mean, there has to be some way. But how often you may find data weight fields that may have 0 is, it's something that needs to be prevented. So this is where it gets more complex. And in order to make sure that you have rules, we have another concept of information governance across each domain throughout the enterprise. So whether it's patient experience or location or quality, and then those information governors, we get into the roles of data stewards that really zero in and making sure that the data is correct and what gets added gets vetted through the right process. And so they set the parameters, bookends. So it's a kind of a rigorous framework and different roles within it that make it happen.
Love it. Love it. That's awesome. That's really helpful. Let's talk a little bit about privacy. And you always see in the news about all these incidents, hacking incidents and the like. So how do you deal with that? How do you deal with those concerns in your role, in your job, especially in healthcare?
Right. So you're right. So from my perspective, I think that the privacy and data hacking concerns, they add yet another dimension to analytics in healthcare. So patients, as we know, they expect the healthcare organizations to keep the data safe, as I shared before. But on the other hand, we in healthcare organizations have a responsibility to garner the best insights we can from the data so we can take the patient experience and patient care to new levels. But what I've noticed, David, I'll share with you, is that many years ago, it was not uncommon to come across data analytics companies and organizations that offered great solutions that we could use. But when we would do the technical due diligence and security scans, it often revealed that their solutions were not safe. And I mean, from a privacy or data security perspective. But however, in today's age and advancement, everyone is aware of the privacy issues. So we have seen that that is very infrequent because companies are architecting their solutions and processes to really safeguard patient data. Having a robust data governance process is yet another way to ensure that all data related decisions are actually vetted through standard process, and that really averts risks, especially when decisions involve data sharing or data leaving the four walls of the hospital. So then data governance comes into play once again.
Yeah, I know that a lot of people just think that data and analytics is an internal process, but the best companies share that data with their partners, and that helps those partners do a lot more for the company that's sharing the data, and makes it better for the customer. So that's an interesting vector there. So how is it? I mean, especially in healthcare where you got PII and all kinds of sensitive data, how do you secure that for your partners? What are some of the things you put in place to make sure that that data doesn't get into the wrong hands?
So obviously, you have to have it's a perpetual journey in terms of making sure that data is safe. So our chief information security officer is thinking about it day and night, making sure everything is safe. But purely from a data perspective, what another trend that we have seen in the industry that has happened is that companies and organizations have figured out a way, and they continue to get better at it, is to work with anonymized data. So you don't necessarily always need to have PHI or protected health information to garner some of the insights, depending on what problem are you trying to solve, what insights are you trying to garner. You may just be okay with non-PHI data. And so a lot of this is the newest trend that companies would come to you, like you said, like you mentioned before, they'll offer you great solutions, and they'll put it very clearly in the beginning of the discussion that no, we don't need PHI. We don't need PHI from you. Now, there's another debate and a topic of how deep can you get with your insights without PHI. So right. But for the most part, depending on the problems you're trying to solve, trying to gain a better understanding of the population data in your community, where your patients are coming from, what are the dynamics, identifying gaps, disparities, you don't really need PHI. So that's the trend we have seen. But even then, at least in our organization, it all has to go through a very rigorous process, which involves not just IT, but also our privacy team, legal compliance, everyone. It's a team effort to make sure, because that's the last thing anyone wants to happen, is to have a data breach. So that's why all safeguards in towards the beginning of the process.
I like that. That's so anonymization, of course. So Omer, this has been a great conversation. I want to thank you for joining me today. And to the audience, please visit cdomagazine.tech for some additional interviews. Thank you, Omer.
Thank you so much.